This is Farming with Science. Okay, welcome back to another episode of Farming with Science. Today, we're going to continue our talk regarding diseases and disorders in our farm. And for that, we have our plant pathologist, Marlia Bosques. And to give you a little bit more context, we do have a lot of people calling us constantly, trying to identify what's happening to their crops. And that's one of the main reasons why Extension is here. So today, we're going to talk about the steps that we're going to go through to get a correct diagnosis for an issue that we're seeing in our farm. Marlia, welcome back.
Thank you so much. And before I go to the step-by-step, I wanted to first mention and try to reiterate that the most crucial part of actually managing a disease is knowing what type of disease you have in your farm or in your garden. And this is important because sometimes we think that because we have a fungi or a fungus in our farm, we may think that it's the same management for all of them, but that's not always the case. So it's very important to know specifically what type of disease you have to accurately manage it in your farm. And it's also important to notice and give attention to that we're always going to see several symptoms in our plants, and they may be due to more than one thing. So when we observe symptoms, it's not necessarily caused by only a disease. It could be an abiotic factor, and it could be an abiotic factor.
Okay, Marlia, so now can you talk more about what are the steps that we need to follow to diagnose the disease in our farms?
Yes. So the first step that we have to take is to first notice and observe how the plant should be look when it's normal and healthy. So for this, you need to know the common name, scientific name, and it's also crucially important to know what type of cultivar that you are working with. And as I previously mentioned, knowing what type of cultivar will let you know what type of resistance your plant has to specific types of diseases. So after you know all of that information, you know how your plant looks healthy, we move on to the second step. Okay, so the second step would be to observe symptoms and signs. First, before we move on to show you a few images of this, I want to define some basic terms. So when we talk about symptoms, we mean changes in plant growth or appearance in response to abiotic or biotic factors. This could be alteration of normal appearance, necrosis or death of plants, overdevelopment or underdevelopment of tissues and organs. And I'm going to show you some images of different types of symptoms you can encounter in your farm or your garden. We have chlorosis, which is usually also known as yellowing, necrosis, we have blight, wilting, we also have reddening, cankers, vascular discoloration, rot, stunting, hypertrophy, and hyperplasia. Dieback is another common one, and virescence. So those are different types of symptoms you can encounter, and it's important to mention that they can be also seen together. For example, if you have vascular discoloration, that means that you have a pathogen that is either in the xylem or phloem of the plant, and that can also present wilting in your plant. So you can have two types of symptoms at the same time. And it's always important to take note of all the symptoms that you observe. The other term that we should know is signs. So signs are observable evidence of damaging factors. That can be mycelium, spores, bacterial exudates, insects, and insect frass. So it's important that we talk about insects because insects are two vectors of viruses, bacteria, and other types of pathogens that are prevalent in plants. So as you can see from these images, spores could be present in all parts of the plants. Mycelium can also be present in all parts of the plants. And for bacterial exudate, something that I would recommend if you think you have a bacteria in your plants is that you take the stem, you cut it in half, you put it in a glass of water, and if you see like a white stream running through the water, that is indicative that you have a bacterial pathogen in your plants. After you observe the symptoms and signs, we would move to the third step, which is to check for patterns. This is really important because this is the key way that you can see if you have an abiotic or a biotic disease. So if it's an abiotic disease, you're gonna see the symptoms in all of your farm or in all of your garden. So it's not gonna be irregular. It's gonna be present in all parts because, for example, if you're not watering correctly, it's gonna be present in all of the plants. Whereas if it's a pathogen, a biotic disease, you're gonna see irregular patterns in your farm. So maybe you have like specific spots that you see in your farm, and that means that a pathogen may be present. That's very common in nematodes and fungi and even bacteria. So when you check for patterns and you observe your farm, that is something that you should be taking note of. Finally,
there are some exceptions. If you have a water leak and then you're not irrigating, uh, every plant is not getting the same amount of water, that may present some wilting in a section of the farm, or there's a difference in soil type. That's another abiotic sign that may present some specific signs in a region. That's why we should know the signs and symptoms of everything that we're talking about in controlling a disease or disorder.
correct, yeah. And that can also happen with application of pesticides. Sometimes tractors are not calibrated correctly, and you're going to see that only one section of the farm has a specific type of symptom, and that's also an abiotic factor that you can encounter in your farm. Finally, the last part that you would have to follow would be to ask questions. Think about, have you or irrigated your plants? What type of pesticides have you applied? How much fertilizer do you apply in your farm or in your garden? So take notes of all the different management that you do. And also, if you know information about soil characteristics of your farm, that's also equally important to know. Also, doing soil samples to do nutrient analysis. All of that different managements are crucially important to actually know if you have an abiotic or biotic disease.
So that last part makes me remind you all that Extension service provides diagnosis, also provides information on soil types. We have extension agents that can help you guide you through the resources that we do have.
If a farmer have any question about how to identify a disease in their farm or backyard, what are the resources that are available for them?
So in Florida, we have several resources that farmers can access for free. Some are online, so we have several extension publications that they can check out. Some of them are specific to a crop, so they're really good, and it provides photos of symptoms and signs of specific diseases to a crop. You also have the diagnostics clinics that are available through all Florida and in Puerto Rico too. In Florida, for submitting a plant sample, it costs you $40. And I would really recommend that you follow the instructions about how to send the sample so you can get an accurate diagnostic. So I also encourage you to check out the American Phytopathological Society. They have a lot of educational resources that are online, and they provide a lot of different information about plant diseases. And they actually have a compendium series that is specific to a crop, and they have all the information that is needed for diagnosing diseases of a specific crop.
So, in summary, the 4 steps are: first, you have to ID the correct plant. Second is to look at the signs and symptoms. Third, look at the patterns to determine if it's a biotic or an abiotic condition that you're dealing with. And fourth is to ask yourself questions or gather further information of questions. This is weather related? Is it related to the disease triangle issues that we talked about? So anyway, we have a lot of resources through the University of Florida IFAS Extension office that you can take advantage of when you're wanting to determine what's happening to your plants. So we encourage you to pay us a visit, write us an email, contact any of the IFAS Extension offices that are near you, and we can help you provide solutions to those issues. With that, I'm going to leave you, and remember that
this is Farming with Science.